Could there be aliens in the ocean? And did the recent November 2024 UAP hearing actually confirm this?
Despite the ocean covering the majority of Earth, only about 5% of it has been explored. Is it possible that we have missed something major in the 95% that we have not explored?
Following the UAP hearing, the internet is buzzing about whether or not aliens are in the ocean. In this episode, we dive into what was said at the recent UAP congressional hearing regarding underwater submerged objects, or USOs, and highlight other interesting events from the proceedings.
This episode is for anyone intrigued by the unexplained, interested in UFOs, or that is simply curious why social media is going off the rails right now about ocean aliens.
I'm your co-host Izzo, joined here by your other co-host Magnum.
And this is the Swerve Podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Swerve Podcast. We've got a special bonus episode in store for you today.
What's up, everybody? This is going to be an exciting episode. I'm excited to share with you this recent knowledge we have. But I wanted to say, if you're a first-time listener and you're wondering what you've stumbled across, we are the Swerve Podcast, and we do deep research on topics that swerve off the mainstream path, then talk about them in an uncensored way that's not boring. Here we like to prioritize listener-requested topics, preferably topics previously unknown to us, doing the extensive deep dive research so that you don't have to. Typically, we cover fun conspiracy stuff, fringe or cutting-edge science, forgotten or alternative history, strange myths and urban legends, consciousness, UFOs, true crime, the paranormal, or unexplained mysteries. Yeah, so today's episode is going to be a little bit different. We had a lot of hubbub coming up to us about ocean aliens. We're seeing a lot of stuff. We had some videos go semi-viral about ocean aliens. So we figured we should get into the depths, figure out where this is coming from. So today's episode is going to be a little bit different. We are going to hop right into the basics instead of doing our normal welcome drinks.
Yeah, let's hop into it.
So we've been seeing a lot of people asking whether or not aliens are in the ocean. There's a lot of YouTube shorts going around. There's a lot of TikToks. People are freaking out, I would say, about whether or not aliens in the ocean have been confirmed. So today we're going to address these claims and we're going to explain where all this is coming from so that you can make up your own minds. All of this appears to have stemmed from the second UFO congressional hearing that happened last week. I don't know if people are aware of this, but this is the second UFO congressional hearing. There was another one in 2023. This one is titled The Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Exposing the Truth. The hearing was held at the Rayburn House Office Building in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, November 13th, 2024. Now, Izzo, I don't know. Did you see this when it dropped? Did you tune in? Were you aware of it?
I mean, I was one of those people that saw the many TikTok videos about it, but I didn't actually anticipate, the UAP congressional hearing to happen. So it was kind of a surprise when it did, but I don't know, it provided more information and right in our niche. So I'm glad we're covering it today.
I didn't quite catch it live, but I caught it the same day, which was very interesting. In this hearing, there was 4 different witnesses than the first UFO congressional hearing. In this hearing, there was a guy named Dr. Tim Gallaudet, another guy very famous in the UFO space. His name's Lou Elizondo, another dude, Mr. Michael Gold, and then finally, Michael Shellenberger was there, which I found very interesting because he's more of a journalist, environmentalist, homeless pieces he puts together. I had no idea he was in the UFO space at all. But this first dude, Dr. Tim Gallaudet, he's an American oceanographer and a retired rear admiral in the United States Navy. He also has a PhD in oceanography, and he worked for the U.S. Department of Commerce as the acting Undersecretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere, and he was also the acting administrator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or the NOAA, which has come up a lot on this podcast, right? The NOAA is always seeing weird shit, hearing weird things in the ocean. So this guy was actually involved with them very seriously. He's also a rear admiral. I guess what he does now, he's the CEO of an ocean STL consulting firm. So he's always doing ocean stuff. But he testified, he has some very interesting stuff. I think a lot of the alien ocean stuff comes from comments he made, which we'll break down for the listeners as we move through this. Lou Elizondo, come up many times on the podcast. He was formerly employed by the United States Army Counterintelligence and the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence. So he's kind of like, he's an intelligence guy. He was also, this is interesting, the director of the now defunct Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or ATIP. This is kind of the modern day Project Blue Book, where the government is actually funding an organization to figure out what's going on with UFOs. And he was the director of this, allegedly. This program, ATIP, was also associated with the Pentagon UFO videos. These are those famous Go Fast videos, the Tic Tac video, the gimbal video that came out in 2017 that the New York Times wrote on. That was coming from ATIP. And Lou Elizondo, he was directing this program. He also studied microbiology and immunology at the University of Miami. I want to throw that in there because he does have a science background. He's not just an intelligence guy. He's pretty good guy. Pretty interesting stuff that he has to say. Now, Michael Gold, this was the other person testifying at Congress. He's the NASA guy. He's NASA's former associate administrator of space policy and partnerships, and he's a member of NASA's independent UAP study team. This is interesting. I actually didn't know NASA had a UAP study team. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
They're out there. They're looking. I mean, I guess, why wouldn't you? It's NASA.
Our version of the Galactic Federation, or NASA's version of the Galactic Federation.
Something like that. I don't know. He worked in the private sector as an executive for the now defunct Bigelow Aerospace, which was headed by Robert Bigelow. Bigelow's come up on the podcast many times. He owned Skinwalker Ranch in the past. He also had a company. He was trying to do what SpaceX is doing. Not exactly. Okay. I think he was trying to make hotels in space. A little different, but he doesn't have that anymore. But he's a billionaire, and this guy used to work for him. Michael Gold currently works as the chief growth officer at Redwire, an American aerospace manufacturer, and serves as treasurer for the Commercial Spaceflight Federation. Very heavy in space stuff. He's testifying what's going on. He was also awarded NASA's Outstanding Leadership Medal in 2021. Impressive guy. I liked him in the testimony. He was very lighthearted. I think he even, when he had to put his hand up and take an oath, he made the Spock shape. So he didn't just hold his hands together. His fingers were separated like an alien. And I was like, all right, that's pretty funny. Good for you, dude. And then finally, the last person that testified was Michael Shellenberger. This one took me for a surprise. He's an author. He's written some books. He's a journalist. You know, I've seen him on Joe Rogan a number of times. He writes on a wide range of topics. Usually it's free speech, homelessness, environment. But now he's testifying about UFOs in Congress.
Yeah.
So, and some of the ocean alien stuff comes from his testimony, which we'll talk about when we get into the next section here. But I found it very interesting. I was like, why is Michael Shellenberger here? But he was. For people who are coming in here and they don't understand the UAP topic, maybe you're not super familiar with it. The purpose of this is happening right now. We are at the point where we have people testifying to Congress about UAP because we don't know what the hell is going on. And there's just too much information coming out that it has to be addressed. So the purpose of the congressional hearing, this is part of an ongoing effort to provide more information about what the government does know or does not know about UAP. Really, the major catalyst for this second hearing, which all this ocean alien stuff came out of, this is dovetailing off the 2023 hearing, which we did cover in an episode. It's episode 101.5 for listeners who are interested. The main piece of that testimony, which we're not going to cover in depth at all, a man named David Grush, he testified that there was a classified crash retrieval program that existed in the government that was being held secret from Congress. And that was a pretty big deal. That blew up.
And all this kind of spurred Tim Burchett's UAP caucus. This is the congressional party, I guess, that's hearing these testimonies and trying to get other government agencies on board for UAP transparency.
Yes. It's wild. 2024 is crazy. Things are accelerating. This hearing created quite the splash. I fucking hate puns, but damn it. Low-hanging fruit. Okay, anyways, let's get into this next part. Let's get into the meat of this. Let's highlight some parts of the congressional hearing that relate to alien ocean phenomena.
The ocean was already terrifying AF, and now technologically advanced intelligent entities may also be down there, biding their time, lurking and monitoring us. 2024 is out of control. Let's figure out what was said at the recent UAP congressional hearing and if we should avoid the ocean once and for all.
Okay, as I mentioned in the basics here, Dr. Tim Gallaudet, I think a lot of the ocean alien stuff is coming from what he was saying during the congressional hearing. So let's highlight some things he was on about. One of the most interesting things, he was talking about this mysterious deleted email that was referencing underwater UAP. So how the story went, January 2015, he's serving as the commander of Navy Meteorology and Oceanography Command. They were participating in a naval exercise off the East Coast, and this included the USS Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group. So they're out there, they're doing an exercise. He receives a secure email during the operation, and the subject line was in all caps, and it said, "Urgent safety of flight issue." Basically, the sender had seen something and had no clue what it was. So they were requesting through this secure communication channel if anyone knew what was seen. The subtext there being, is there some kind of secret program that we're not aware about during this exercise that someone could comment on so that we know what we're seeing? Now, what's crazy, this turns out to be the famous Go Fast video from the 2017 Pentagon UFO videos that were released, the New York Times wrote about. This is what this was. Funny enough, he's in the loop for this Go Fast video. It's depicting a UAP flying rapidly over the ocean. The operators can even be heard commenting on it. It's the video where you have this circle going very fast over the top of the ocean, and then all of a sudden, whatever the system is they're using, it locks onto it, and the guy's like, "Got it!" That one, that's the Go Fast. And they're like, "What is this?" And they're tracking it. This object, this UAP, was flying in a manner that nothing in the military's arsenal can do. And this wasn't just some blurry footage that we're normally, we're kind of normalized to seeing literally the most dogshit photos of all time in video of UAP. That's what the public has for information. But this was captured using the forward-looking infrared sensor of one of the Navy's FA-18 aircrafts that was participating in this exercise. So very, very high-tech shit. This isn't, a speck or a weird reflection in the sunlight. The next day, the email is gone. Tim mentioned that he didn't have it anymore, and any of the other recipients, they also didn't have it anymore. And none of the superiors discussed this subject again. So Tim was saying, this is what he's testifying, that he was upset because he was responsible for assessing the safety of flight risks, but now he's not even able to discuss this matter. So I think this was an important comment in the hearing that a lot of people caught on to. It's not necessarily coming out of the ocean, but it's flying over the ocean.
Yeah.
So people are associating aliens with the ocean. But he also does go on to mention, this is another important piece that came out during the hearing that I think people are converting to, aliens are in the ocean. He does mention unidentified submerged objects, or USOs. So for people who are new to this topic, unidentified flying objects in the sky, unidentified submerged objects in the ocean. And now, just to converge the terminology, everything's just UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena. So it doesn't distinguish if it's aerial or submerged. But he does mention USOs. In his opening statement, he says, USOs are known to occur in the ocean. And I want to remind listeners why this is significant. Everyone here is under oath, so they will literally go to prison if they perjure themselves. So they have to say things that they know are true, or that they, in certain settings, demonstrate is true. I believe that's correct.
Yeah.
That's why this is a big deal, because you can say anything in an interview, but when you're testifying to Congress, it kind of ups the ante, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's why it has such significant weight, these congressional hearings, is because you have these high-ranking officials and highly decorated individuals, both with science and military backgrounds, essentially not lying to the best of their knowledge when they're making these statements.
Right. So he also does say that there was a USO in the 80s that exhibited characteristics of a Russian torpedo. It approached a nuclear submarine, then slowed, and it followed it for a few minutes, and then it rapidly exited the scene. So he does mention that, and he also does say that the USOs have outpaced US submarines by orders of magnitude. So here again, I think this is some of where the Ocean Alien TikTok stuff is coming from, because he's talking about USOs. Also, Lou Elizondo, he does mention in this hearing a situation where UAP were stalking US Navy ships. Elizondo says that the UAP are intelligently controlled, as in certain military cases, UAP anticipate human maneuvers and also stalk US Navy ships. So pretty wild shit. Finally, Michael Shellenberger comes in, and I think he's also contributed to the aliens in the ocean thing here, because one of his key stories from one of his sources is about orbs coming out of the ocean. He testifies to the members of the House of Representatives that his source has seen, I don't think in person, but through a secure network, a video where there was 2 white orbs that come out of the ocean 20 miles off Kuwait, and then they join together and then just rapidly exit the frame. Very characteristic of UAP stuff. Strange objects, and then all of a sudden, they're just, in a split second, gone. Rapid acceleration. The video that he's talking about, that his source is referencing, is 13 minutes long. It's in high definition. It's in color. And it was filmed from a helicopter. And this is an important piece of the testimony, this helicopter piece, because the helicopter, this isn't classified. This isn't some technology that is filming that that the US wouldn't want to release, because then their adversaries could judge, here's their capabilities or something. This is just like a helicopter that they got this footage from. So there's no real reason for it to be classified, but it is classified nonetheless. And I think that was an important piece, and probably why he chose that story to testify with.
Yeah, that is interesting. They're not saying it's like filmed with an iPhone or anything, so there could be some highly advanced camera system or tracking system that they don't want out, but still, it is. I like that distinction that he made about it should be available, but it isn't.
Yeah. He also, Shellenberger, he testified that the source of the video came from the SIPR. This stands for the Secure Internet Protocol Router Network. This is used by the Department of Defense to transmit classified information. So this is where that 13-minute video that's high res and in color comes from. His source apparently had access to this network and is telling Shellenberger about it. So I think this is also contributing to the aliens in the ocean thing. And people are like, it's testified. They're in the ocean. And that's why everything's going crazy right now. The last thing I will say, this did come up. Everyone was asked about underwater bases. So literally, I forget who it was. It was one of the ladies in the hearing. She was just like, what about the underwater bases? And I was like, well, that's a cool question. That's kind of out there to just ask out of nowhere. And then no one says they have any information about underwater bases.
Was that Lauren Boebert?
Probably.
That asked that? Yeah.
Yeah, probably. That sounds familiar. So there wasn't a lot of ocean-related stuff mentioned. Most of the hearing is about completely different stuff. But this is what I found and listened to that is related to the ocean. And I think this is where all this is coming from.
Yeah.
Now, I want to say before we hop into the next section here, there is some other things, and I think this could be contributing to where this bubbled up and kind of took over the zeitgeist for a second. There's anomalous ocean stuff that's not related to this hearing at all, but kind of happened in recent time. The first one, the Cryptoterrestrial Hypothesis. So we did cover this For listeners who aren't aware, I want to talk quickly about what the cryptoterrestrial hypothesis is. This cryptoterrestrial hypothesis posits that non-human intelligences responsible for unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAP, may be present on Earth, potentially living in hidden environments like underground locations or in the ocean, rather than coming from other dimensions or other times. So this is just one of the many hypotheses out there trying to explain what UAP may be. And recently, this is like September 2024, there was 2 Harvard researchers and a professor from Montana that wrote an academic style paper on this. And this kind of blew up it actually was featured on several mainstream media news outlets. I know the professor, he was doing different interviews on podcasts and stuff, and it was really blowing up, and people were like, oh, there's aliens on the moon, or there's aliens in the ocean, and the Harvard says so. So we did cover this. It was a Patreon exclusive episode, Patreon exclusive 52. But I wanted to mention, I think this also adds to things, because it's like September, we're like, there's headlines saying, Harvard says aliens are on the moon and in the ocean, kind of stuff like this.
Yeah.
And then now you have in November this hearing where other individuals are like, aliens, well, they're not saying aliens are in the ocean, but people are taking that and saying, oh, it's confirmed because it's under oath and it's in the Congress. It's coming out. So, right, cryptoterrestrial hypothesis, they do reference underwater bases as maybe a potential source. They don't definitively say it. They're just speculating, right?
Essentially what that cryptoterrestrial hypothesis is saying is we've been looking out for so many years, but no one's really conceptualized or tried to look in. And that's what they're doing. They're like, they could be out there in space, but we haven't even explored the possibility of them being on Earth, within Earth type of thing.
Exactly. And I will say in that paper, they do say this is highly speculative. They make that claim very clear. So everything they're saying is definitely not definitive or authoritative. They're just speculating, trying to have fun, a little fun, and address things. But I think this adds to it was like a little spark, and then the hearing is the fire kind of thing.
It's kind of a primes people's minds and expectations.
Right. Now, the other thing I want to mention, this was, I believe, from 2023. There was a 4chan whistleblower that came out talking about UFOs in the ocean. I want to just briefly go through what this was. I know in a lot of subreddits and things, this was big. I don't think this really hit mainstream news like the cryptoterrestrial hypothesis did, but I do think this was also a priming factor. Allegedly, this whistleblower comes out on 4chan, says that he or she has intimate knowledge of what the US currently knows about UFOs, minus the last 2 years. They say that UFOs are primarily unmanned drones. UFOs are built to spec each time they are deployed. UFOs are created by a mobile construction facility that hides in the ocean. This construction facility destroys anything that comes close to it and will disappear for days when approached aggressively. And he or she also says the US believes the facility has been active on Earth for at least 100 years or much longer. This got a lot of attention back. It was one of those posts that comes out, creates a lot of buzz. When I was going through this post, people were asking the OP questions, and they said some very interesting things. He or she referenced that they think the facility is artificial intelligence, that it might not even be a living thing. It's completely artificial, and perhaps could go back as far as 4000 BCE. When asked what is the purpose of UAP, the OP for this 4chan post mentions that an official asked him something that stuck with him. They act like keepers of a zoo, uninterested in the daily life of wildlife until there's a problem. One other thing that stuck out to me, he or she, I don't know, said that attempts to approach the facility have all been fatal. Maybe this was also priming people's minds. There's this underwater construction facility building UAP to certain specs and sending them out to monitor nuclear bases, certain events, maybe collect samples. I don't know. But I think this also contributed to the ocean alien idea significantly. Yeah,
I would say it's definitely an interesting post. Kind of gives some insights into what it could be. But just like reading it, the unmanned drones kind of reminds me of Ingo Swann's story of how Mr. Axelrod, he went there and they saw a UFO and he was told that they're unmanned drones, essentially.
Right.
So building on that, you also have jumping on to like how big AI has become, where they're mentioning it as a part of like this autonomous facility that just builds UAPs or UFOs just for the purpose of monitoring Earth, which, I mean, I like the post, but I think it's hopping on other trends and other things just to kind of build interest.
Yeah, it's also, that post is highly influenced by other past things. We should say that. The only reason I'm bringing it up and emphasizing it is because it's somewhat recent, 2023, got some attention there. I'm not saying that everything I'm saying here, I should mention that for listeners who are astutely into this subject. I'm not trying to make a definitive list of USOs and things like this. We could do a whole other topic on this. I'm just trying to bring some recent things to light that may have been primers that sparked why the hearing blew up in such a way.
Yeah.
One other recent thing, Commander David Fravor, he does talk about a nuclear submarine incident. This is not super recent, but I know Fravor gets a lot of attention. This is the guy who witnessed the Tic Tac video. This was also of the 3 videos we talked about from the 2017 Pentagon UFO videos that were released that the New York Times wrote a story on. One of them, Commander David Fravor was involved with, and that was the Tic Tac video. But he also mentioned some other things. And I'm going to play some audio quickly about what he had to say about the nuclear submarine incident.
They hook the diver up on the winch and they're lowering him in. And as he's looking down, he sees this big, massive, he goes, it's not a submarine. He's seen submarines before. Once you see a submarine, you can't confuse it with something else. This big object, kind of circular, he says, is coming up from the depths. And he starts screaming through the intercom system to tell him to pull the diver up. And the diver's like a few feet from the water. So they reverse the winch and the diver's thinking, what the hell's going on? And he's getting pulled up and all of a sudden, he said the torpedo just got sucked down underwater and the object just descended back down into the depths. And they never recovered the torpedo.
Jesus.
So these are just some things of recent time. They're not anything to do with the hearing, but just anomalous ocean stuff that maybe is contributing to why the idea that aliens in the ocean is a thing. We have the hearing happen, and then now it's like, oh, it's confirmed because it's official, it's government. I think that's probably what we're seeing going on. But I want to say, while we're talking about this hearing, there's a lot of crazy things that came out of this, and I would like to summarize this in the next section because I think listeners are going to appreciate the broader sense of the topic if we can go through some of the highlights from this hearing.
So, what else was said at the UAP congressional hearing that we should be interested in? Are they also in the ground? Are they in the walls? Who is Nancy Mace? Let's discuss some other wild highlights from the hearing.
All right, one of the most important things that came out during this hearing, it was a secret program called Immaculate Constellation. Representative Nancy Mace, who served as the hearing's co-chair, she brought out a 12-page document detailing a classified UAP crash retrieval program known as Immaculate Constellation. The report was brought to Congress by Michael Shellenberger. So this is why he's here, I think. He had a whistleblower tell him about this program. He gets this 12-page report. Allegedly, the executive branch has been overseeing and managing UAP without congressional knowledge for possibly decades. This is what's being outlined here with this report. And I want to mention, notably, this was a pretty interesting highlight from this hearing. Nancy Mace mentioned that she was told by unnamed individuals to not mention the program's name in a public setting, and that certain individuals did not want the hearing to even happen. So she said, she mentions casually, she might be on a list now. And then she says something, which I think is going to be a very famous quote in the UFO lore. She says, quote, "Come at me, bro, I guess," end quote. So I think Nancy Mace is pretty badass. I'm going to say that. Pretty interesting. She's getting in the weeds, getting in the thick of things, calling shit out. I thought it was very impressive. Yeah, she's out there. She's calling shit out.
Yeah. I like that. Come at me, bro.
This was another highlight I want to bring up. She says there's an outright refusal to share classified information or cooperate by certain agencies with Congress. She also mentions that the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, AARO, is unable or unwilling to bring forward the truth about UAP. So AARO, for listeners who aren't aware, this is the present day UAP agency, body, entity, institution. They're supposed to be figuring out what is going on with UAP. When something happens and there's a report, figure out, okay, was this a weather balloon? Was this something of ours? Was this an airplane? You know, try and ground what's going on. And then if we can't figure out what the report is, at least have a record of it. That's the idea. So it's very similar to like Project Blue Book and ATIP, just kind of tracking reports and making sure things can be accounted for. But what Nancy Mace is saying is that AARO is just really bad at their job. They're failing. They're not really doing it. They're potentially just a front. She doesn't really say that, but that's my take. She's calling it out, and it's like, okay, well, you're supposed to be bringing truth to this, bringing transparency to this, but it seems we are just unwilling or unable to do so. So what is the purpose of this? Yeah,
and it also seems like agencies are avoiding interacting with Congress because I guess they are the public-facing thing. So if they interact with Congress, it's going to become public.
Yeah. The AARO website, if you go to it right now, this is what it says. Our team of experts is leading the U.S. government's efforts to address unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP, using a rigorous scientific framework and data-driven approach. But my understanding of AARO is they're just pumping the brakes on stuff. So they're not really doing their mission mandate. And she's calling this out. Mace says that if there is no there, then why are we spending money on it? And why can't we see how much money we are spending on it? She's citing the AARO budget as an example here. So she's calling some shit out. I respect it. One other highlight. This is Shellenberger again, coming in clutch as someone I didn't even know was into UAP. He says from his sources that he has information from that there are hundreds or thousands of classified high-res UAP videos. And here I have a segment that we're going to play of him explaining this from the hearing, and we'll play that now.
What's the key takeaway, just a few seconds, about the Immaculate Constellation document you provided us today?
I think that what the American people need to know is that the U.S. military and intelligence community are sitting on a huge amount of visual and other information, still photos, video photos, other sensor information, and they have for a very long time. And it's not those fuzzy photos and videos that we've been given. There's very clear
high res,
high resolution.
How many visuals, graphics, videos, photos?
I mean, I've been told hundreds, maybe thousands. I mean, I also wanted to say, because there was some conversation around concern around the revealing of these materials, revealing the source collections, but some of these are shot from helicopters using normal videos of oceans. I just think that's absurd that somehow you're going to be revealing some secret U.S. technology by revealing that you've photographed orbs off the coast of Kuwait.
Another thing that I found very interesting during the hearing that I wanted to bring up, again, going back to Shellenberger coming in clutch. So Representative Green was grilling the shit out of Shellenberger on Shellenberger's source, where this information was coming from. It was a very tense moment, I would say. But Shellenberger, I respected this. I was impressed by this. He didn't slip up at all. And he even says that he would go to jail to protect his sources. So I found that very interesting, because maybe he, as a journalist now, can be a beacon of light for other whistleblowers, because they know he's not going to say shit. He was very vague about his source. He wouldn't answer questions. I think the representative even directly asked him, he's like, you can't say it or you won't say it. And Shellenberger was like, no, I won't say it.
Good journalist. Good journalist.
Yes. Now, of course, we got to go into some other stuff here. Elizondo, as usual, he's just all over the place, dropping crazy information and being vague as fuck. And anytime there's a direct question, he's like, I signed some shit. I can't say anything at all. But he does have some interesting things that come up. He's talking about the non-human intelligence, alien bodies type thing. I want to play a quick audio snippet of him answering some pretty interesting questions, and we'll play that now.
Was anything described as that we have possession of bodies?
Yes.
We have is it multiple types of creatures, or?
Sir, I couldn't answer that. I can tell you anecdotally that it was discussed quite a bit when I was at the Pentagon. The problem is the supposed collection of these biological samples occurred before my time, in fact, before I was even born.
And was this part of the Lockheed Martin discussion, or was this the Biologics is a completely separate?
Separate yet related.
Okay.
So Elizondo, he says we have biological samples, but those particular biological samples were collected before he was born, and that those biologics are separate but related to the aforementioned craft materials allegedly held by Lockheed. That's one thing that came up. Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So there's like American companies that may possess material or even biologics from crashes. And we're talking about this at a congressional hearing. It's very out there, very wild. One thing, another highlight that I found interesting is Lou Elizondo mentions that we could be in a secret clandestine UAP arms race. He states that we're in the midst of a multi-decade secretive arms race, one funded by misallocated taxpayer dollars and hidden from our elected representatives and oversight bodies. That's what he says during the hearing. And I find that very interesting because what if that's actually the case? China might have some stuff or be looking into certain things. Maybe they have a crash retrieval program. Everybody has material. No one knows exactly what it is, but everyone's trying to inch towards cracking the case. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah.
So we're just inching towards disclosure. I don't know.
It feels that way.
It does.
If I'm being honest, it feels like we're going that way, but I've also seen online a lot of people start referencing Project Bluebeam in like the comments of these TikTok videos and YouTube videos. So
interesting. Right. Is it
distraction
all just a psyop?
Tactics? Yeah. Or psyop distraction.
Yeah.
Preparing us for the ultimate trick or so.
Could be that. Lou, he also mentions that the UAP have been recorded moving in excess of 2,000 to 3,000 Gs. So for reference, the fastest military jets do about 9 Gs of acceleration. So in theory, a human being, if you were operating a UAP, you would just be crushed to death.
Yeah. I think he was saying like the human body can only take like 9 Gs of force before it starts like passing out or blacking out or even leading to death. Mm-hmm. But the highest level of aircraft that they have can withstand about 19 Gs of force. Anything above that, and the aircraft itself starts to disintegrate. So when you're talking about these UAPs, they're going like 100 to 150 times the G force and not incurring any structural damage or anything. So he's like, this is way beyond capabilities that we're even capable of or have seen.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. Now, finally, we've kind of touched on this. This is kind of obvious, maybe implicit, but really the crux of these UFO hearings, it's all about this crash retrieval program or this alleged crash retrieval program. It was stated that the US has a crash retrieval program with the purpose of reverse engineering recovered materials, but none of the witnesses are able to or do give much information or detail about the said program. Anytime they're questioned, they say we can, in a secure setting, a SCIF, we could say some stuff, but we can't otherwise. If I were to summarize this UFO hearing, to me, it was very, very similar to the testimony that David Grush gave with Commander Fravor and Ryan Graves in 2023, in the sense that we're talking about a secret crash retrieval program. Congress isn't aware of this. This is the main thesis. What I found interesting, this somehow became aliens in the ocean this time. That was the main thing that, at least in the mainstream, that was caught on. That I'm seeing. The crash retrieval program, although it is the thesis of both of these hearings, for some reason in 2024, we're all interested in the aliens in the ocean. So same thing, crash retrieval programs mentioned, no one can comment on it. They're talking about secret programs withheld from Congress. They're saying evidence is everywhere. Shellenberger's like, there's hundreds, if not thousands of high-res videos, but no one can seem to get access to it. Again, they call out Arrow being a joke, and that's something we've already known for a long time. So with that, I think this is a good time to hop into final thoughts.
Yeah, let's do it.
What's the most important thing about this topic for you?
I think just the fact that so many people claim to have witnessed these videos and encounters, and there's still a lack of evidence that the public has. The other important thing is just how messed up government is.
Yeah.
It seems like doesn't matter which country you look at, there's always, like the government and then the shadow government.
Government. Yeah.
Yeah. And all these agencies like just withholding secrets. And it seems very inefficient, but what do I know? I'm not a politician.
Exactly. Most important thing for me from this, I'm happy that people are making memes and TikToks about all of this, because even though I think what is being said is overstepping the claims that were actually made at this hearing, I just think it's cool the UAP topic is getting press. We could say that. Mainstream, it's entering the mainstream mind. And I think normies will slowly get it over time as they keep being exposed to these things. And at the end of the day, like, I'm not even saying that this is some crazy extraterrestrial thing. This could be all man-made, some branch of physics that's been compartmentalized. It really could just be a cool B-2 stealth bomber thing, but it's like an orb that's been created in some novel understanding of physics. I'm not speculating. I just know that people see weird shit. And there's so many reports now that it's getting to the point where it's becoming overwhelming to say, oh, there's nothing happening. Everybody's a liar. And maybe that could be the case too. I don't know. I guess we'll find out. I'm open-minded.
Or instead of lying, everyone's being deceived.
Could be that too.
Like these superiors are like letting people think that they saw a UFO or a UAP, not giving any explanation. So the people testifying, they're like, well, to the best of my knowledge, to me, it seems like a UAP or a UFO or aliens, because I don't have any additional information to go off of.
Correct. There's so many wild tangents you can go on with this. But I think that's the most important thing for me. People are talking about it. It's getting out there. It's getting press. We're covering it. For me, biggest swerve from this, I thought Nancy Mace executed that phenomenally. Calling out these secret agencies or whatever it is, we don't know. Taking the heat, getting out there, good work. I thought that was impressive.
I mean, I'm sure she's going to have a lot of bros coming.
Yeah, maybe that's the biggest swerve of all. I don't know. For her age, she's keeping it together. It's good. What's the most hilarious or funny thing from this topic for you?
I don't know. I think we've already discussed it, just like the tangent of people starting to make memes of it, make fun of it, bringing it into more mainstream things. Like this is the second congressional hearing in 2 years. So I'm sure it's just going to keep happening more frequently. More people are going to get exposed to it. More people are going to start either believing in UFOs or, finding ways to discredit them. So it's interesting to see what's going to happen. But
yeah,
I don't know. Overall, I just think it's a great topic. Going to enjoy seeing the other memes and stuff that come out.
I just think it's an incredible time to be alive. It's crazy. So we're on the frontier of building real artificial intelligence, cutting edge stuff. This UAP thing is legitimately getting mainstream acknowledgement now. So UFO, like mainstream people are talking about UAP regularly. Bitcoin's taking over the world. It's eating the fucking world. Then you have Elon at Vivek. They have a Doge up. Like, it's just crazy. This is like pure simulation shit going on. 2024 is out of control.
That Doge title and the Dogecoin connection.
So crazy.
You can't make that up.
It's so crazy. We live in a weird, crazy time, but here we are. We'll see where things go. We'll keep listeners updated, and I hope you were informed. I think we got to the bottom of where this ocean alien stuff is coming from right now.
But if you're interested in other episodes that we've covered, we release 2 main episodes a month on all platforms where you get your podcasts. We additionally have a Patreon where we cover other topics as well, and in more of an unhinged way. So you can check that out on our Patreon. So patreon.com/the Swerve podcast. For $1 a month, you can get access to all those bonus episodes that we release each month, where we've covered topics such as the Cryptoterrestrial Hypothesis and many other topics as well. If this is your first exposure to the Swerve podcast, thank you for listening, and please do check out our other episodes as well.
Before we roll out of the episode, as always, we would like to give massive props and credits to our producer tier on Patreon. Thank you to David Cheesem, Shelly Terry, SF Baby Doll, Big Ball Small Wiener, Batcat Meatloaf, Velcro Shoe Guy, Tosh Collins, Honest Elliot, Max Baseman, Johnson, Andrew Johnson, and Christian J for enabling today's episode and the continued growth of the show. And with that, thanks everybody for listening. Appreciate the shit out of you. Slap that ass.
And ride the wave.
I thought that was impressive.
I mean, I'm sure she's going to have a lot of bros coming.
Yeah, maybe that's the biggest swerve of all. I don't know. For her age, she's keeping it together.